Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Possibilities with Monique DeMeo. I am supercharged today to have a wonderful, wonderful guest with me by the name of Michelle Collins. Let me tell you a little bit about Michelle. Michelle M. Collins is the president and CXO of an ANA, a non-agency. In 2020 and 2022, they won honors for top 500 fastest growing private companies as by Inc. magazine. A non-agency owns, operates the award-winning ANA Brand Closet Showroom Socials and Style Taste Experiential Hospitality podcast, which you can find on YouTube at a non-agency underscore NYC. Collins, a Forbes Business Council member, has been featured in such publications as Forbes, Women's Wear Daily, Design Retail, Retail Touchpoints, Total Retail, Event Marketer, Retail Wire, and a slew of other media outlets. Michelle has also presented at leading industry conferences such as Retail Innovation Conference Expo, IRDC, Digital Signage Expo, and many others. As a Tokyo native and a New Yorker of 20 plus years, she lives at the intersection of technology, fashion, and cultural fusion. Her background is in journalism, marketing, and public relations, and she just has this incredible way of storytelling and experiences. Collins' work over the years as a creative consultancy can be seen across Fortune 100 companies and the top advertising and marketing firms. Her role has led as experiential creative director, technology and production partner, and experiential partner, and she's launched first of its kind, award winning, industry recognized accomplishments, including the first airline debut at CES Delta Airlines. Her clients include, are you ready for this, guys? Delta Airlines, Richemont, Arcadium, Van Cleef and Arpels, Candy, Louis Vuitton, Lancome, Microsoft, Kate Spade, Saks Fifth Avenue, Uniqlo, Bloomingdale's, and too many others to name. Welcome, Michelle. I am so honored to have you here.
Thank you for having me. That was a mouthful. You did it so well.
It was. I know. I need to do something about my addiction or something. Or you have to have, more boring brands, but that's never going to happen. So we're happy to have me trip all over that.
Oh, thank you.
It's funny. I was thinking about what it is that people think of you when they think of your name. And it's like you're the woman that makes shit happen, right? When the big boys, and I'm going to say that in the nicest or not nicest possible way, can't get shit done, and there's a really, really big project and a really, really, really big brand, and they just can't pull it off, you're the CEO's call, aren't you?
I am. I always like make the joke, and also we talk about this. Like, I'd rather be the first call, but for some reason, I'm that call when it needs to get done. And I'll share a little funny story. One of these situations happened. A phone call went to a colleague, and the question back to the COO was, is this a mission critical, extremely high profile, important project? The answer was yes. Can you afford to screw it up? No. Okay, so I'm going to send you somebody. Now, she's not a cup of milk. So just so you know what that means she's not going to smile and nod and pretend like everything's great, but she's going to get it done. She's going to get it done well. She's going to get it done exactly on time. So that does sum up. I tend to be that person.
Yeah, it's called to get it done, get shit done, girl. That's it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, so I think what we want to do is maybe unpack the reasons why, well, I wanted to actually ask you your principles of life. We talked about your principles of life and how that shows up, and potentially we can unpack why it is that someone with your incredible qualifications and your incredible history and background and awards is the one that they still has they're still waiting to call because they need to fail first and then come to you.
Yeah. How do we unpack that? Let's see. Well, my first client for many, many years ago, who really taught me the principle and created the impetus for the idea of creating a creative consultancy when nobody really thought that was a viable business. He said to me in technology, it's always when they fail they call you. He's like, we do gangbusters. We just wait for people to screw up, and we know they're going to screw up because they don't do it right. They don't know enough. They're too cheap on the budget. They don't have the expertise. They're going to call. And when they call and you get it done, forget the conversation around budgets. He's like, you are going to leave an imprint that is always going to set the bar for the next. He's like, and inevitably that bar is so high that's almost impossible for them to figure out how to reproduce that. But I think you asked the question about kind of the life principles, and we talked about this. One of the core things that it's difficult to embrace, but I've always said you just can't play the game of catch up. You can sit and aspire and be inspired. But if you're constantly looking to others and what they're doing, and you're not thinking about how you can learn, you can glean something really valuable from that, and then think about what is it that is missing? What is it that you could do better? What is it that you relate to? Then the whole conversation is about what everyone else is doing. And I just don't live by that mantra. And I think that that is a pretty bold statement, but it's also a statement that came with a lot of hard, tough moments. And you're an entrepreneur, so you get it. It's not a cup of milk. And so yeah, when the COO says she's not going to be that cup of milk, that's right. It's not about drinking a cup of milk.
I like to say I'm not for everyone. I'm comfortable with that because I'm not going to tell you what you want to hear. I'm going to tell you what you need. And then it's up to you to do something with that. I feel like that was like my kindred spirit.
Yeah, I mean, isn't it funny though when we say that, it's like, oh, it took a long time to say that's okay. Be who you are, live in the moment of the moment and what you represent. But I think that sometimes people think that that statement is arrogant, overconfident, and I said actually it's humility. I said I think it's a big statement of being able to look inward and say the thing that most people would find to make them uncomfortable. And by admitting that, it's more of a sign of humility than it is ego or, you know, arrogance.
That's actually I've never heard that before, but I really like the lens on that, the take on that that statement. So in a full soundbite, we would say that the idea that you are not for everyone is humility, not arrogance. That's brilliant, actually. So, what other life principles do you want to share with the world? Like, if you had, if you were able to do a Michelle Collins State of the Union right now, what would that look like?
This is fun. Okay, so I guess I have a little bit of time. I can talk about it. Well, we've talked about, I have this ongoing thought process that I would like to kind of kick off a speaking platform. And this would be don't play the game of catch up. And I would literally say it's the catch up bottle, right? Because the catch up bottle is a very fascinating thing to me. Number one, catch up. If you study catch up, right, it's probably one of the most successful products ever created in the history of consumer products, right? For many reasons. But I've always watched people take the ketchup bottle, glass, or squeeze bottle, and I watch people struggle, right? Because they can't get the ketchup out. So people either bang away, and I'm like, are they going to figure it out? No, maybe. And or people will take the squeeze bottle and then they splatter and they get ketchup everywhere. And then there's the person I really dislike the most, which gets so annoyed and just puts a dirty knife in there and just shoves the knife in and ruins it for everybody, right? So that's kind of gross. But a lot of people, if you think about that, let's go pull the lens back. That's life. That's how people behave. So when I use the word catch up, I do mean that literally, that I watch people and I've been like this since I was a kid. But I do know that what I do is I look at the ketchup bottle, I assess why people are doing it, and then I see the little air pocket bubble in the bottle. And I said, oh, this is basically physics. And basically, if you can get that air pocket bubble to move, right? Which is why the whole idea of turning the bottle at an angle and tapping gently just to give that air bubble a moment to shift and move, then at some point you hit the tipping point where it just floods, right? You get all the ketchup you want. So I think that's kind of an interesting metaphor for the way I see life and opportunity. So I'm a big French fry connoisseur, right? So it's very appropriate in that conversation. But I dovetail it into a few different speaking points, and I think life kind of philosophies. I am a petite woman. I am the person who is not necessarily always say this. I'm not the smartest person in the room. I'm not, many things, but I am born the year of the rat. So if you know what that means, there's the story of how did the rat become the first in the lunar calendar. And the story is that when the emperor put the challenge in front, all of the animals went for it. And the rat's tiny, short legs. I mean, what is the rat going to do? Well, the rat figured out partnership, right? Made a deal with the ox. The ox, like nobody wants to get in the way of the ox, right? Because the ox is going to plow you down. So they had a partnership. The rat got on the ox's shoulder, and just before they got to the finish line, the rat said thank you and hopped over. The rat is the first. So this was told to me by a dear friend of mine because I was having this angst about what we just discussed. I'm not for everyone. And I was beginning to feel inadequate. I was beginning to feel many things. She quietly said, "Do you know this story?" And she said, "And you are that." She's like, "You are extremely, you see the race ahead of you. You understand what you are and what you're not. You're willing to take partnerships. You're smart enough to partner with the smartest animal, right? In the race is the person who understands the partnership and who is going to be the right partner." And so I say that to everyone I talk to, which is find your partner, look at the race ahead of you, and think strategically about how you get to the end of the race in the position that you want. And that's the long game, right? That's not the short game. That's not like, let's go for it. It's, you might need to think about it. You might need to have a few conversations. So there's one. I think my favorite second, which, I've used throughout the teams that I work with, is that oftentimes when you work with teams and you're working crazy hours, and this drives me bananas, people go, just to order pizza, just order the team's pizza. And I always have hated that because number one, I think it's cheap and disingenuous, especially for us that have access, right? If you're working in New York City, et cetera. I've also said that I think that shows the team what you think of them. And that if you're asking them to work to the bone, which oftentimes we're working 3, 4, 5 in the morning, serving them something that, first of all, is not nutritious, is probably just bad for them, right? You've got all kinds of stomach issues. And then the second part is it's also saying to them that you don't matter. So I have this principle of, I ask people, do you want sushi? People don't like sushi. Okay. And then I'm like, do you want champagne? And it is a literal question because I think that everyone deserves to be treated as if they're being celebrated for that moment. So I would always say, don't be cheap with your teams. Don't be cheap when you're asking them to deliver things that are just heroic because they're never going to do it if you don't show them in the smallest gesture and detail that they are your equal. Yeah, so maybe don't ask them if they want pizza. You can ask them if they want sushi, or maybe offer up champagne. Offer up something that celebrates who they really are. So I think those are the two kind of most interesting points.
I love that. I can only imagine like that soundbite, right? Like, I want to work with Colin. She offers champagne, not pizza.
I mean, we mentioned the Delta CES project, and anybody who's ever worked on CES knows that it is one of the most difficult and most expensive things for clients to invest in. So from the union labor crews to my crew, and oftentimes I will say that this is the difference as well. Although I'm the lead, although I'm quote the president of the company, et cetera, I made it a point to show up every night with the crew, even if it was 3 in the morning or 4 in the morning, and I would bring them champagne. So many people had never had, this brand of champagne. I'm going to do a product plug, my favorite, Runar. And I said, because I think you're worth it. And I said, because I want every day, every night for us to look around and say, look at what we're accomplishing with the short amount of time, the challenges that were faced in front of us. Everyone deserves this. It's not just me. It's not supposed to be the big people sitting in the suites. We treated everyone that way, and they were just exceptional. So when I tell you I didn't have a bad CES experience, I didn't have all of the other things. Sure, we had the hiccups, but we got around them. It's because we treated every single person down to the union guys in a way that they were just hands down. Anytime you guys come back, we'd be happy to work with you.
That's awesome.
Yeah, and that comes from, I think, making your own way in the world and understanding. Or like, when you wait tables, and I'll never forget, I ran into the door and the door flipped back and all the scampi flew on me, and then I had to go to the table and they're like, "What's today's special?" I was like, "Me with scampi." That was today's special. Ta-da! Because I couldn't change shirt. I smelled like garlic. What do you do? Today's special.
You roll with it.
Yeah, you roll. That's it. Yeah.
I think, so I don't know, we're not quite through your seven principles. I've only gotten three so far, so I'm sure there's more. There's many more. I want to write them all down. I want to make a giveaway for people who are listening to this podcast. It's going to be called the Michelle Collins Seven Principles. It might be like, maybe we can make it the bookmark in my book, like the Michelle Seven Principles and the Seven Secrets. We're going to have like the multiples of seven going on there. So fun.
And I'm going to share something personal because it does make sense here. I recently just I lost my mother, and she was always the person who really, like, life hit her with a lot. But no matter how much she would feel a certain way or I would feel a certain way, the first question is, okay, what are you going to do with that? Like, and I was like, what do you mean? What am I going to do with that? I just want to feel a certain way right now. She's like, okay, feel a certain way. Are we done? What are you going to do with that? And that was the spirit. She never let anything stop her in personal or professionally. And I think that is probably the biggest thing that I always say to people is like, you have an opportunity to make decisions. Life doesn't happen to you, really. Sure, there are things that are out of your control, but when people say, well, I had no control and I couldn't help it, yeah, okay, that's fine. But like, what are you going to do with it? Right. So I think a lot of what we find is that people get stuck in the, well, that happened to me. I don't know what to do, or complaining. So all that complaining and all that, like, it happened to me, you have a choice. What are you going to do with that? And I think most people stand in the area of feeling very comfortable blaming other people, right? So again, I really admire the fact that when you can admit and what you shared of I'm not for everyone, being able to embrace that statement means that you already understood that you're not pointing the finger outside and saying, well, you're just not smart enough, you're just not patient enough. It's, I get it, I get who I am, and I'm just saying that, I'm not for everyone, but I'm going to spend more time finding the people that I am for, that, right, that get me. And perhaps that's probably one of the core things that people don't do. They spend so much time trying to convince themselves that they are for everyone.
Oh my God. That you opened a Pandora's box for me because as a marketer and they call me the messaging queen. Um, it's this idea I tell people all the time. If you don't stand for something, you stand for nothing. If you think you're for everyone, you're for no one. I different is better than better. Like I have these one-liners that are just completely about what you just said. You can't be for everyone. And if you try to be, you are for no one. So clients need to know, wow, look at her. She's got a sweet spot. She's really good at this. We need that. We need that secret sauce. But if you can't identify the secret sauce by virtue of looking at what you've done, they have difficulty making the leap of faith that you can be that person for them. So that's always the challenge.
Yeah, it is. And I think I also, so I'm about to speak at an industry, like our industry. I was invited to sit on a panel for event marketer, and the panel is about, talking about moving forward 2024. What do agencies need to be doing to be relevant and interesting? I'm just short phrasing that,
Yeah.
but I'm sitting on the stage with some pretty powerful, very accomplished, some very much of the same giants of industry, right? So not trying to shoot myself in the foot, but I find that when I was asked the question in preparation, I said that, I guess I kind of asked myself, that is, why should a brand work with you? Why would a client want to work with you? Like, the client technically, right, and the brand has taken all the risk. They put in the millions of dollars or billions of dollars, and when you walk away saying, we did that, oh, we created this influencer campaign, it was so successful, we did that, look at us, we're winning awards. My attitude is, if I was sitting in that executive suite, I would say that was really easy because we paid for it, right? So what does that mean? I think it means that if, for example, your whole messaging is about authentic and we're about the community and we're about creatives, then I would be looking under the hood to say, what do you do that shows me that, other than like sending some people to the park to pick up trash or to, these like corporate DEI programs that are not truly committed in a way that, I mean, does it really strike home? Do they ask? Did that really help? Was that meaningful? I don't know. I think that there is going to be a conversation about what have you created and funded without clients' money that shows how you're committed to a community and how you are willing to take that risk. And whether the returns were small or large, or even if you failed, what did you do that wasn't predicated on someone else giving you the opportunity or giving you their hard earned dollars? And I think that is a very important lesson that more people need to get involved in. It's always a conversation about how much money can we make? How much money? Yes, money's important, but it's also great. Like, if I give you $1 million, show me what you did with your own $1 million. I mean, there is kind of this reckoning coming to fold, right? Communities are going to be super important. And I was chuckling with Nina, right, about it's almost like it's not hard. I think if you look at the bellwether kind of the ebbs and flows of how society and culture has evolved, it's as simple as this: the Tupperware parties. We're going back to Tupperware parties, by the way. And if people who are listening or potentially hear this don't know what that means, you should do some homework. Right? You should do some homework as to why the Tupperware party is so relevant, just like ketchup. If you don't do that, then again, you're living somewhere in a world and sphere that, again, between you and I, Monique, it's like you're not for us, we're not for you.
Absolutely, absolutely. I think, yeah, the community and feeling of it's the sense of belonging. It's the sense of being with your people. It's being understood both as a brand and as a person. And I think the bullshit meter on the younger generations than you and I is higher than our generations were. I think they smell inauthenticity. It's like, oh, who you pretending to be? Like, I'm going to call you on your shit because you really don't really care about us. This is just corporate speak. So let's separate the wheat from the chaff, as they say, or the men from the boys. So a great question I find is, how did you find your voice, your authentic power? I mean, obviously it's all a journey, but kind of what were the moments and or experiences that led you to kind of be the Michelle that we're seeing today?
Well, I'm Asian, and I mean that's a big deal for me to actually say, and I want to unpack that for you. Growing up Asian and growing up in a country that wasn't in a place where the Asian community was embraced. And even today, we're not completely embraced, but it's also on us. We have to do more to speak up and show up and be heard and be visible. I grew up with a military family, so retired Air Force colonel, but I'm a hybrid of different cultures, different generation, military families who don't necessarily stay in one place at one time. So if you are military bred and you're listening or hear this, you know what that means. It means that everyone speaks at least three languages. The sense of what inclusivity and diversity means. Like, just drop you on a military base, you'll understand. I was raised with that. And my friends from childhood are still my friends today. And we are extremely different from one another and in all ways. But when you want to thrive and have a culture of a family, because your family is really the people around you, not just your immediate family, you learn to start being interested and inquisitive about people and the surrounding. You lose the fear of being in the unknown, right? Because that's how it works. I mean, believe it or not, when we moved back to Japan, I didn't speak Japanese. I was always taught to be polite. And then all of a sudden, my mom screaming at me, push. And I'm like, push people in the train? I don't understand what's happening. And it is like you have to really just think about how one's exposed and then being self-made. So I wasn't given, I have a scholarship fund ready for you. I have your college fund. I was under the impression I was going to be a stellar student and my parents were going to package me up in whatever great school I could go to, I was going to. Well, that didn't happen. It was, well, you're 16 and like you haven't saved any money. I'm like, save any money? What are we talking about? Right. So go get a job. Okay. Keep your, your A's. Okay. Start applying for schools. Okay. But then I actually didn't have a realistic view of what that meant. So I had to get scholarships. I had student loans. I had to work 3 jobs. And that was just the fundamental, like, drop me in the middle of the ocean and see if I swim.
Good.
Right.
I think we have similar background.
Right. So that in itself cultivates a certain type of, well, persistence, tenacity, humility. But on the flip side of that, it also can create bitterness, resentment, and a completely different persona. I always say that I was very fortunate that along every single part of that journey, which was very difficult and very lonely, that I always had these one or two individuals in my lives that came into my life exactly when I needed them the most. And they just helped me find the roots and the foundation of, comfort and feeling that I could be okay with being who I was, right? So self-made, moved to New York, did that pretty quickly too. Lived on a couch, lived out of my suitcase for about 3 months until I could figure out how to sort myself from, California to New York. Had crazy roommates, just like everyone does in New York, right? Earned your way. They were crazy. They partied all the time. You know, I got laid off from my first job that I moved to New York for. What am I going to do now? And then I started to figure out how to hustle and freelance. Next thing you know, a friend of mine says, I can get you this other job. And then I'm like everybody else, I'm like, why am I in this job? I'm miserable. I'm complaining every day. Yeah, I'm good at it, but I'm not happy. And I remember saying to myself out loud, oh my God, I'm turning into the thing I dislike the most. And that was the moment where I said, sometimes in life, you need to remember what it's like to eat dirt. Not that I've ever eaten dirt, but that feeling of just having zero, having nothing left and being able to risk it all. And so that's what I did. And that really hunkered me down. And so I started the consulting practice. I got my first technology client and, and I grew from there. But life happened. Right. So then I thought, oh, now I've got it. Right. Now I'm in my groove. And then another life event happened that really brought me to where I am today. So I was getting divorced. I had given up my clients. I had shifted my whole kind of focused, and I had lost kind of this vision of who I was and I am. And I just remember being just like feeling the same almost desperation. And I used to run on the river every day, and I didn't know what I was going to do. And I was questioning everything about me. And I just remember saying, like, I don't want to be what anybody else wants me to be. I need to be who I am, and I don't know who I am anymore. And it was actually an older client, a previous client of mine, who was a big champion of mine. And he said to me, I don't understand what the problem is, Michelle. He said, when we hired you, you came in gangbusters. You fixed all the problems. He goes, I don't understand. Like, you also are really good at blackjack. And he was like, I'm not a gambling man. He said, but I would assume that if I was, he goes, I would bet on you any day. And he said to me, why aren't you double down on you? Why are you not committed to you? Like, have you not no sense of like what you're capable of? But when he said it to me, and he said to me, you need to be doubling down on you. Who's going to believe in you if you can't double down on you? And that's what it was. And I said, oh, you know what else do I have to lose? So I went back to that place when I first like moved to New York and had to figure it out. He reminded me of the very thing that I had been talking about, and that was it. And so I literally went on a limb and said, I refuse to be what I'm not. And so I came up with this idea of I am a non agency option. And I'm going to embrace the fact that I'm that person. So that is a long-winded way to say that's how I came to being who I am and forming a non-agency, which by the way was the biggest risk I ever took in terms of alienating myself from many opportunities, but it's also what got me to where we are today.
That's an amazing story. It's great. It's great because somebody else with an outside lens saw you for who you were and reminded you of who you were. And, balls said the queen, I like to say. It's sort of like, hey, do you understand how you're showing up for people? And you need to remind yourself because I call it eating your own dog food, really. That's what it really is. The cobbler's son has no shoes, the eating your own dog food is sort of analogous. So, what is it about the way you are now, the way you're showing up now? You're comfortable in your own skin, you're unapologetic. And by the way, congratulations on getting to that place far younger than when I got to that place. So there's that. Kudos to you. Took me longer, but that's okay. Um, what is it that you want to impart to women that are either, in your age bracket or the ones who are coming up and doing that self doubt, self reflection and not coming up with the double downing on themselves?
Well, I think it's so important to take what is confidence and commitment, and also, again, acknowledging the humility that goes with admitting the fear, and embracing what may not be readily accepted by others. So I hear a lot of loud noise right now. Like I hear people saying like, I don't want to be judged. I'm just going to be myself. And I'm not saying that that's what I'm doing. In fact, I am very conscious that when I present to clients or I work with my teams that I am being judged. And I understand that and I embrace that. And sure, there is a time and a place for saying like, look, take it or leave it. I would just say to those that are aspiring to that you don't know everything. That's reality. The truth is, unless you've lived a few more lifetimes, right, especially for the younger generations, you are dynamic and smart. I mean, I would just run out the gates like I couldn't wait for anybody. I had to learn humility. Humility was you don't know everything, and just because you do doesn't mean you're right, and that if you're going to put your foot down and demand something, here's what you should be prepared to do, which is could you do it without that person's reputation? Could you do that without that person's investment? The answer is no. Well, then maybe you should go try. Try so that you can see what you're really made out of. So, versus screaming and chanting and spending all that time chasing the illusion of other influencers or being a copycat or all that. I mean, I would just say spend more time being unique. And let me tell you something, like we talk about AI, right? Everyone's talking about it. I am an advocate that AI is a wake up call. It is going to challenge the mediocrity of humanity to say, for those that are not truly willing or interested in rising to a next level, then you should be very scared. Absolutely. AI is not meant for people who just want to like take notes on a piece of paper and eat a piece of toast and drink milk, right?
It's not for coasters. It's not coasters at all. You got to make shit happen.
Yeah, and you better constantly be asking yourself like as somebody who's gifted with we have so much talent and capability, are we really living up to that, and like how do you serve others? And it's not just about a little volunteer time here and there, and even if you just take on one thing where you really commit to caring enough about someone else to help them through something and you get no return, I think that's just equally as important. So yeah, I mean, be authentic is a statement everybody wants to talk about. Well, authenticity is about being able to really demonstrate that you have lived life, you have failed, you have gotten up, and you continue to see the world with a lens of, I will still make great things happen. That's it.
That's a powerful statement. I'd like to bottle that. Authenticity is knowing that you can still make things happen even if you've failed. I mean, sort of that's what I got my takeaway of it.
We make mistakes, we fail. We're not like, again, let's go back to the race. We're not the smartest people. We are not. There's just no way to ever say that you are the smartest person in the room, most talented person in the room. But we are what we are. And we certainly have a lot of other people in the race with us that we could look to collaborate, to partner, to help. And again, I echo what you say, which is, yeah, don't be afraid to say you're not for everyone, and be honest about if that makes you uncomfortable. It still kind of makes me uncomfortable to this day. I'm like, man, I wish I could just, I always say, I wish I could have just been that girl that's like sit on the corner and be cool with just being wallpaper and like who cares? But I do care. That is who I am. So
I would venture, I'm going to say two things to you in reference to that. One is I tell my son this, I've said it to him probably more times than he cares to hear it. And I said, if you're the smartest person in the room, get another fucking room.
yeah. Oh yeah.
So that's one. And I say it in those words with the F bomb in it, and there will be no cutting of F bombs here. And the second is that, what makes you great and what makes clients attracted to you and your superpowers is because you're not that girl in the corner going with the flow and just blending in and looking vanilla bean toast, whatever the expressions are that American analogies and me don't get along. So I'm going to screw every one of them up. So, yeah, but that's why, right? So trying to be any other way or trying to pretend you don't care and all this stuff, it's just not who you are. And, the fact that you figured it out is great. And more importantly, as importantly, not more importantly, they've figured it out. And that's why your business is so successful. And it's going to be more successful, I can tell.
Well, I hope so. And I appreciate those positive words of encouragement. So
Absolutely. The thing that strikes me about you, and I want to just kind of bring this to the forefront for listeners and viewers, is this idea of teamwork and treating people. I mean, you really do live it. And I know people talk about, oh, you have to treat people the way you want to be treated. And that's all good. And it's soundbite, soundbite, soundbite. But I get really sick of sound bites. And to your point, the noise. I'm more interested in actions. Buying champagne for your crew at 3 a.m. when you're working your asses off and not offering them pizza, and small things like that show up for me as a character reference. I feel like you've gotten the memo that you can accomplish more when you have a team of people in your circle. So I want to just have you address that.
yeah, okay. So I love that. Like that's a great closing note. So it's also when I say treat people in that fashion, it doesn't mean that you're supposed to be this perfect leader and like everything's supposed to be rainbow and butterflies. In fact, what I say is when people in a room have opinions, my whole statement is if you have an informed point of view, we are going to listen. An informed point of view also means that you need to have knowledge, expertise, and it's not a statement of like, I feel. So when I talk about that reference of the team, I also mean in return, which is the same courtesy, because I often think that people think that it's always like the boss is obligated to treat the team with such kid gloves. And the truth is, no, that's not our role. Our role is to actually lead and make decisions that are risky, and especially if it's our funds, our investment, our name on the line, that the type of respect. So this isn't about spoiling them, it's showing them respect for their talents, and I ask in return the same amount of respect. So I think there's a challenge that people forget that when you're then called out for not delivering, not doing a great job, being disrespectful, the common thing to do is say, well, you're not being a kind boss and you're not being thoughtful. But the reality is, again, it's a, informed point of view. Where is your informed point of view? Have you ever run a company? Have you ever had $1 million and invested in it? Have you been charged with that? And so perhaps that's also a takeaway. I'd love for people to be more cognizant of the you can't speak to me that way, you shouldn't treat me that way. Well, there's a lot of you going on there, right? But you work for us. And the us also means the client. And when I have a moment with a client and I say to them, like, if there's a disagreement, I always say, with due respect, you are the client. We will do what you want us to do. But we do have an informed point of view. We would like to be heard, and here are the reasons. And then I can always caveat that with, we don't feel respected for a point of view. That's one statement, right? It's not the obvious. So I think people confuse that when I show up at 3 o'clock, I don't actually have to show up, but I do it because I remember and I still do the work. And I want them to know I'm with you through all of this work. But it's important that we also have the same in return. So maybe the youth can also, the next generation can remember, you should remember to say thank you. You know, they've forgotten to say thank you and please. It's we go on a business trip. They assume that we're always picking up the bill. When we go for a coffee run, they assume we're picking it up. Like my best and favorite interns were always the one that would bring me like fruit or coffee and say, "We've noticed that you haven't eaten all day. Please eat." And those interns are now director of global marketings for some of the biggest brands. And I knew it the day they did that. Because I said, this is it. This is character, what you just said. There is a defining characteristic of people who just do it naturally. And they know how to say please, they know how to say thank you. And you know what? When you screw up, you say, I screwed up and I apologize. And I'm not going to make that mistake again.
You got to own it. Yeah, you own the successes. I think, what is it, the expression, success has many mothers, but failure has no father, or I don't know, something like this. But anyway, I think, what you're describing, and I think we're going to close off on that, is sort of the citizens of the world. Be aware that the world does not revolve around you. That you are a small cog in the wheel, but you can make a difference no matter who you are and where you sit and what your job or your role or your responsibility is. And treating people with the dignity, respect, and the community that we have all earned, not deserve. I hate the word "you deserve this." I like the "you have earned this." I think but you, to your point, you have to earn it. In my mind, that's how I feel too. It's like I don't owe you anything. You work for me until you have shown up that you have earned the mutual respect that we're building together. Then we can do amazing things. Amazing.
You just said it. You just said the thing that should be said at this event marketer event, which is I think that's what agencies need to do better. Like they need to understand that what you just said. That's the attitude we should walk in with every client of saying we want to earn this opportunity and respect. It's not just yeah, we're gonna knock it out of the park, and we have a retainer that sets us up for. Of course, we're gonna do great work. We are winning all these awards. That's not it. Is that they need to feel that every time that you are committed every time. So yeah, thank you for sharing that. That's a good one.
Yeah, absolutely. And use the word and rather than but. So if the client is this, this, and this, and we'd like to have you consider, we'd like to have you consider our point of view rather than but we don't feel that you're hearing a point of view, allows for the thing to be much more positive and end up on that note where, they're feeling like they have agency in the solution and the resolution. I felt has worked. So I do finish all of my proposals with we look forward to the opportunity of earning your business. And that's how I kind of leave it. Okay, so masterclass people with Michelle Collins. This has been amazing. I think the catch up moment for me was really great. I love that analogy for life and how you show up and you're so observant and you are a citizen of the world, both literally and figuratively. Don't be cheap with your teams. I thought was amazing. You have the opportunity to differentiate yourself. You are how you show up, and I love your explanation of what being Asian for you has meant. My BFF Bernadine is on this, and she talks a lot. She's Chinese American. She talks a lot about being an Asian immigrant in the United States and having her Chinese roots and what that has meant to how she treats people and how she engages, and just it's very interesting. And mine is being European and not born here and having parents that didn't speak English, and so that there's that kind of common thread there. The client betting, telling you to double down on you, amazing. It's very interesting that sometimes we have to hear it from somebody else before we believe it for ourselves. Embracing the fear and learning humility was also terrific. Authenticity, can't even tell you how excited I am about talking about authenticity as a general rule, but really meaning it and really owning it, especially when you and I work with brand companies that have mastered the spin, and I get so flustered and frustrated with the spin when it's bullshit. And then having an informed point of view, which I think is incredible. So I think that's when somebody says something like, in the meeting and you're not hearing me and this is what I think and they have no context. Say, okay, what makes you say that? So what experience have you had that you can assert you can assert that with no context. So anyway, thank you, Michelle, for so much. We are thrilled to have had you here today and hope we can continue. Thanks for tuning in, guys. here you are, Possibilities, Monique DeMeo. Thank you for having we're thankful to have had Michelle Collins. Have a great day, everyone. Thank you so much for listening to Possibilities with Monique DeMeo, where we unpack life as a female mover and shaker. If you like the show, please consider liking it, or better still, subscribing to it and leaving us a rating. It truly does help. Also, you can pick up my book, The 7 Secrets to Creating a Life You Love, a practical guide for women in leadership. You can find the book, other episodes of this podcast, and how to stay in touch at MoniqueDeMeo.com. DEMAIO. I look forward to seeing you again soon. With gratitude, Monique.